Armchair commanders, we call the shots. From our living room thrones where the action's hot. We're the generals of fiction, the masters of war. In silver screen battles with buttered popcorn. Armchair commanders, armchair commanders.
Yeah, that works. All right, welcome to the Armchair Commanders podcast. My name is John, and this week, my partner in crime, Jack, is too busy to grace us with his presence because he wants to be a thespian. But I have the next best thing. I have a guest with us, Ben. If you want to introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's great to be here, John. My name is Ben Cantwell. I go by Ben Cantwell Art. You could probably tell that I'm an artist because of that. I like to, try to bring that up front. I did 4 years in the Marine Corps Infantry, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, Magnificent Bastards. I've been drawing since I was a kid. I think a lot of us get given chalk and crayons, and I just kept going and enlisted in the infantry. Currently, I got a okay size social media following. I'm out here pushing out unit designs to people. I'm doing company logos. I'm doing firehouse designs. Just any sort of artistic project that walks my way. I'm pretty lucky to work with a lot of first responders and military folks. So I'm surrounded by good people making good art and trying to push some good programs and messages and work with a lot of good guys. Stoked to be here though.
It's great having you. This is one of those times that like the social media algorithms work out really well because my preferred tattoo style, or it's the only tattoo style I get, is American traditional. So I follow a bunch of traditional artists, and because we're a war movie podcast and I like a bunch of traditional artist pages, like it's a kind of a perfect intersection of the stuff that you do. So I'm glad that it worked out that you were able to join us and talk about tonight's movie, which is Jarhead. Besides the obvious, having been a Marine, what made this your movie choice?
Jarhead was one of the movies that kind of instantly spoke to me. I think it was advertised as a little bit more of like a combat action, wild movie, more in line with some shooters. But after you watch it a few times, I've seen it multiple times in the past and then watching it again to prep for this interview, you really get some heavier messages there. And I think that's what a lot of us are looking for. This movie is about these guys during the Gulf War and their time in and their struggle with kind of assimilating and finding meaning in their roles. And being out of the military, it's kind of a similar vein. When I was enlisted, it was more about the shooters and the action. And now I think we've all matured a tiny bit and, we're not doing barracks parties as much anymore. And we can appreciate some deeper commentary there.
Yeah, I think this is because this came out like 05, 06. Yeah, 05. I have some notes here, but it is kind of timely. I think this is one of those interesting periods in film where it's not immediately post 9/11, but we're still a little bit in the like rah go America type filmmaking as far as conflicts in the Middle East, because at this time we also have like Black Hawk Down that comes out, which was wildly successful. So to see, I wouldn't say that this is an outright like anti-war film, but you kind of get the hints of it every now and again.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. It was during a very, this came out when I was in high school and I was kind of expecting like this, like you said, a Black Hawk Down style, let's go get them. 9/11 was still fresh on our minds, and it's taking this pre 9/11 Gulf War thing and kind of twisting in the same theater of operations that we're re-engaging in. And it was definitely topical, dude, but definitely a different vein than a lot of the stuff that was coming out that time period.
I also appreciated, like, you mentioned expecting this to be kind of, the running and gunning type of film, which is a really hard ask for a Desert Storm movie. Because, it was just a very, very quick conflict. And there was, there was combat, obviously, but like this was, the first Iraq War was definitely like an air dominated type show. Um, so seeing a film that kind of pushes the kind of disappointment aspect of it was an interesting take, because we've done a couple of Gulf War movies, and only one of them really was like that, Rambo shoot 'em up style film, and that was Bravo 2060,
Oh yeah. What's
whatever
the other one? There's a
the British SAS movie,
yeah.
which
There's a Three Kings was Gulf War as well, right?
yeah, Three Kings was also Gulf War. We haven't done
That's
that
another
one,
pretty
but
funny one.
yeah, that one it's got a little more action to it.
Oh
But
yeah. Well,
I
that
really,
cast, you got to have the action, you know.
yeah,
Ice Cube's not going to be in a super. I mean, he has the ability to act, but his style. I mean, he's a go getter, you know.
no, he definitely has a role he likes to play.
Oh yeah, yeah. He definitely
Um,
gets typecast. It was interesting you talked about this war being the Gulf War. We're talking about being very air dominated. I hope people are not looking for to listen to this before they watch the movie because it's a big spoilers alert. But that last scene where they're Swafford and his guy are about to be able to go and take a shot, and they get told not to take their shot as scout snipers on this target they've identified, and their mission gets canceled, and then the Air Force just blows the shit out of the whole airfield. Like that's exactly what you were talking about, dude. This kind of struggle of like what are the grunts going to be doing in these rapid wars where the front line is getting pushed back on a airspace level is not just kilometers and meters, you know.
right, and I mean, to back it up a bit, like, you know, they do kind of the stereotypical, at least it, I wouldn't say this film like started or pioneered it, but something that seems very popular in war movies that focus on Iraq, whether it's Desert Storm or Iraqi Freedom, is they do that like the timestamp of like they're walking off an airplane or off a helicopter or something, and it's like day one or like 15 minutes in country, that kind of thing. And then like throughout the film, it gives you like day or time markers.
Yeah,
Um, and I love the fact that I think, at least in as far as like the historical perspective of it, looking back and how it's taught and how we remember it, I think generally the popular notion of it is that, Desert Storm, like, yeah, the invasion for the Gulf War was very short, very quick, annihilated Saddam's army. Like that's not up for debate. I think what people forget is the like nearly half year of sitting in the desert before we invaded, and the fact that that aspect was a huge part of this film was something I really appreciated.
yeah. The hurry up and wait aspect that touches every part of military life. Whether it's you're a garrison guy and you're sitting at the armory, or you're deployed and you're waiting for a brief or a mission or an op order to come through, and you finally get the green light to go out and do your thing. I mean, it was great, and I think the funniest part for me, I mean, this movie was meaningful and funny. I mean, the shenanigans that you get up to in your downtime. I think this film, on its level of seriousness, also had a playful level where it was able to capture the interaction between enlisted dudes really well, and their kind of ability or inability to navigate their chain of command and not get in a shit ton of trouble for doing these dumb things that we've all done.
I mean, who hasn't had a mop suit orgy? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I remember my first 10, you know? It's like it was yesterday.
You know, it's funny because the last film we reviewed was Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And the thing we kept talking about that is I don't know if you recall that film, but there's like a 5 minute long like snake orgy scene where like this group of 20 people is having an orgy, but there's like snakes slithering all over them and shit. Like, so it's
That
weird
sounds
that
like a lot of trouble.
yeah, it's weird that we've had two movies now that have had orgy scenes in them. So
Hey, you know what? I think it's a good direction. I think it's a good place to follow. You know, it's one of our passions as enlisted fellas. I'd say just go for it, dude. War orgy movies.
yeah, we're going to be rebranding the podcast. It's no longer a war movie podcast. It's just a movie podcast about movies that have orgy scenes in them.
I can see it's a bright future for us.
Probably be more popular. I bet that would really please the like TikTok algorithms.
Yeah, all these creeps would love it, dude. They don't want to hear about the politics, man. They don't want to think. And the other thing that film did, we've talked about enough, is it pushed. I think the you don't see a lot of movies, a lot of war movies, where guys have this internal monologue going on for the whole movie. Um, what was that iconic Vietnam movie, Up the River? Oh
It was
man, it's like
it was either
Apocalypse Now.
yeah, Apocalypse Now was the first one they were watching, and then later on there was the scene where the guy's wife sent him a copy of The Deer Hunter, but it was actually the
Jody,
tape
the
of
Jody
her
scene.
cheating.
Yeah, I thought it was funny when they were watching Apocalypse Now, and in that movie they have that ongoing monologue, kind of talking about how difficult things are, and then in this movie, you know, Jake Gyllenhaal's character has the same thing going on. It was pretty meta. I enjoyed that kind of self awareness. It was almost like breaking the third wall to a point. The
I was
fourth wall. Yeah.
yeah, a wall. Um, I don't know. I was talking with my wife because a lot of times what she'll do is she'll watch maybe like the first 15 or 20 minutes and then bail on me. And she usually has some sort of quippy remark. But this was actually a movie she watched like all the way through with me, which is kind of a rare occurrence. And I remember when the deer hunter scene came up. Like I completely forgot because it's probably been like 10 or 15 years since I've watched this movie. Um, I think I watched this movie shortly after it came out, and then I never returned to it. Um, but I forgot that the deer hunter scene was literally guy puts in a VHS tape, and it's the wife cheating on him, and he flips the fuck out over it. Um, but right before it switches to that revelation, all you see is the opening credits to the deer hunter. And I was just thinking because we reviewed the Deer Hunter maybe like a month or two ago, um, and I was kind of meh about it. Like I recognized it as being like a good film for its time period and the things it did for cinema and all that, but it just I thought it was boring and it didn't speak to me. Didn't care for it that much, and I remember just looking at her. I'm like, if I was ever stranded somewhere and you were responsible for sending me entertainment and you send me a VHS of the Deer Hunter, I would be so pissed off.
Yeah, there's a lot better movies out there, honey. Do some better. And she did send a more entertaining movie. You know, she knew the Deer Hunter was bad, so she spiced it
Yeah,
up with the video of the neighbor.
right.
Just, I mean, we've all been there, dude. I'm sure you've seen your share of guys. I mean, I had to counsel a bunch of my guys, you know, Dear Johns, this and that. And it's never good for morale, dude. And I think them sprinkling that into the movie just kind of made it that much more realistic, like another Easter egg for guys who have deployed. Like, oh yeah, that happens. It
I
happens a
think
lot.
that's I think that's one of those things. It's like I feel like everybody has that common like bad breakup story, but I don't. I think it's so hard to conceptualize like being separated from your family and friends for months on end and then getting that kind of news. Like that's a next level of like shitty right there.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're in a war zone or pre-war zone, and you know you think it's not just a short-term girlfriend or somebody that you're talking to, but it's your wife or real significant baby mama or something. I mean, we've all seen that one, and it hurts those serious guys a lot more than it hurts the 19 or 20-year-old whose stripper girlfriend breaks up with him. It's like, we saw that one coming, buddy. But
But they
this one seemed to be a
co-signed for the
lot worse.
Camaro.
Yeah, it was a good percent. It was fine. She'll keep it in shape.
Uh, and I mean, it was also a reoccurring theme in this film because, like, that's the common kind of like boot camp thing is like, you have a girlfriend? Well, not anymore. Like, because his drill instructor is like, give me 25 push-ups for every time your girlfriend cheats on you this month, Um, and then, later on we see in camp they have the wall of shame board where they just put up pictures of people who have sent Dear John letters. So it's like, it's a very consistent and prevalent feature in this film.
Yeah, I think it's an important part of talking about the waiting is, while you're sitting here in the desert waiting, the world's going to keep moving on without you, you know? And they're not thinking about, the folks at home, when I say they're not thinking about all the dumb stuff that you have to do. They're going 100%. They're following their dreams and their yoga instructors and whatever else they deem important, And you're just trying to stay busy, burning sausages or playing mop football and doing all the sorts of stuff that we get up to.
Something that this film really like drove home for me. So my dad, he was career Air Force. Um, he joined in the 80s and then got out like 07, 08 time frame. So he got to do Iraq 1 and Iraq 2 Electric Boogaloo. Um, but one of the few stories he would tell from his military career, and like granted, like I grew up on a military base and like that was my childhood and whatnot, but I still didn't like he didn't like talk about work and shit. But one story he would always tell, and it was like his crowning achievement in life, apparently, was during Desert Shield, being bored in the desert. Um, he got like a care package, and in this care package there was a box of Cracker Jacks. And this was back when like Cracker Jacks still put toys in the box, not the stupid little card things that they do now. So little trinkets and whatever. And the Cracker Jack box he opened didn't have a toy in it. And so, he was, severely disappointed and indignant. So he like sat down and like just to kill an afternoon because, there's nothing better to do. He wrote like this 5-page letter to the Cracker Jack Corporation about how like, oh, I'm a service member who's deployed overseas and like I have little joys in life and this was one of the few things I was looking forward to, and like not having this toy just completely destroyed my morale, this, that, all this nonsense. And he sends it to the Cracker Jack people. And like
somebody at Cracker Jacks is going to slip their wrists when they get this letter. This is heavy
yeah,
duty. What happened?
it was heavy. And like a month later, Cracker Jack sent a fucking pallet of Cracker Jacks to a squadron.
I mean,
They're like, we're sorry.
If you're Cracker Jacks post 9/11 and you get that letter, you better send a couple pallets, dude. You better send, a whole dance troupe over there.
But
Your
that's
dad played that right.
Pre 9/11 because he did Desert Storm, Desert
okay.
Shield, and then he did Enduring Freedom. So this was when he was bored as shit in the desert during Desert Shield. When we have our main characters in this movie are, just hydrating and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, writing a letter to Cracker Jack sounds a little bit more productive and healthy than scorpion fights.
I felt
which
kind of
these
bad
guys
for
do
that.
get up to.
Like you could see that dude was like genuinely sad. Like that wasn't just his fighting scorpion, that was his pet.
That was his buddy. And I mean, I think we do that. I mean, I remember stuff that was totally asinine and worthless and brainless was heavy duty. Guys used to get into physical fights about who was better. We had a big beef in our platoon about, it's a pretty heavy topic, not so much talked about these days, but Katy Perry versus Taylor Swift. It was heavy duty, and guys,
Yeah,
lines were
that
drawn,
is
lines were crossed, and fist flew.
Early 2000s, I can see that. I mean,
Yeah,
nowadays it's pretty obvious, like whether you agree with it or not, Taylor's on top now. So
she came out on top, but that I'm not going to say where I am. It's a big issue in my platoon, guys. I can't side with one side or the other right now, but it was pretty heavy duty. I think those arguments were going down in 2013, 2014. So, yeah, I mean, you find anything that's dumb becomes meaningless because it's all you've got at that point.
so this movie has the stereotypical, boot camp training scene, except it's not actually like there is a bit of boot camp, but they basically do the stereotypical boot camp training scene, but it's at sniper school. Um, how did you feel about that scene? Because it seems to me like, especially like Marine Corps boot camp is one of those like, if it's a Marine Corps film, there's always got to be this like 20-minute segment showing like how awesome and insane the training is, and like look at us, we're badasses. Like, how do those types of scenes like hit you as someone who went through, the Marine Corps basic?
Yeah, I think seeing films like this and like Full Metal Jacket, you're kind of ready and almost preparing for this crazy assault on all your faculties, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And this movie did a good job, although it was, much shorter than the um, R. Lee Ermey Gunny character that we've all grown up loving. I think they did a good job. I can see people not understanding entirely. There was a difficult um, demarcation from boot camp to sniper school and all this stuff. And at least when I was enlisted, you didn't just become a sniper just like that. You kind of had to go through a deployment or two and then try out for sniper school. So it was definitely a different process for me. But I mean, I'm 20 years removed from this film boot camp wise. But I think it's important to kind of give that sort of rapid access of the strict mental change that Marines do go through. Because when I enlisted, I mean, I totally bit into it, dude. I was brainwashed. My mind was blown, and my world was changed in 20 weeks. And I think letting the viewer do that in 15 minutes is important for them to see, this whole individual to a team aspect thing growing. So I'm glad this movie did it. It was a little bit confusing for somebody who might not have been in the military at all or not really know a lot about war movies. But I like that they had that. I wish more movies did that because then I would learn more about Air Force boot camp or Army boot camp. You don't really see, like you said, those other branches movies don't have the boot camp scene in them as much because it's tough to get the R. Lee Ermey aspect as hardcore and hilarious.
I think Jamie Foxx does a terrific job filling that, kind of, he's not a drill instructor per se, but that's the role he's filling.
Yeah, he did an incredible job, dude. He definitely the top supporting actor in this movie, in my opinion. I hadn't seen him in a whole lot of stuff prior to this, and I was like, he's acting now? All right, cool. Like serious acting. I loved him in this movie. He's definitely, that NCO who's pushing his guys through a little bit of barbaric nature and a little bit of hardcoreness, but he's got his troops in mind.
Not to mention, like, I shared a short on our TikTok and our YouTube pages, just kind of because I usually do like 2 or 3 clips from every movie that we review on those pages, just things that I think really stand out from those films. And the clip where Jamie Foxx tells Swafford, "Hey, show up at 6 a.m. on this day for bugle tryouts," and then he shows up, and obviously it's a trick, but he's like, "All right, play Reveille for me." He's like, "Well, I don't have a bugle." He's like, "Oh,
Play it with your mouth.
play it with your mouth, huh? Play it with your fucking mouth." That one particular clip that I shared, that just like play it with your mouth clip, like, is so popular on our pages. Like, but I think
There's those
that's
moments,
because
dude, where
there's a very small segment of society that's like, I know a guy just like that.
Yeah, we all have those stories and those weird instances where, like, if you told this at Thanksgiving, people wouldn't really understand it or believe it. But there's like, during your 4 years or 8 years or 20 years, those select moments that probably boil down to a good half-hour slideshow of just like, what the fuck just happened? Like, how is this a real thing right now? Are these people being actual right now? And yeah, they are.
The only thing I think that beats the bugle tryout scene is the post mop suit football game orgy is the scene where he's making them make a sandbag pyramid like in the
Yeah.
pouring rain, which I was like, there's a rainstorm in Iraq. Like, was this the first time it's rained in like 30 years? And it just happens to perfectly coincide with his punishment. Like,
I mean, for a good punishment scene, you got to have some rain, you know?
I was just like, this is a little too convenient, um, but I love this the sandbag stacking scene too. Like
Yeah,
well,
we've all had those
I can't hear
sweeping the
you laughing
parking lot and
now.
painting rocks, just all that sort of dumb stuff. Put it up, take it back down. I mean, those are the games that you grow up getting used to, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes this film really great is because you have all those dumb moments, but then like when we actually go to the invasion, like especially like I think the scene that really hit me that I thought was beautifully shot was like very well done was them walking through the burning oil fields and like them having to walk by like corpses and burnt out cars and all this like that was genuinely probably one of the like cinematography wise was probably one of the best shot moments in this film and probably one of the best shot moments in a lot of films that we've reviewed up to this point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, dude. As a visual artist, I'm especially drawn to films with good cinematography, and aside from, cool camera tricks and stuff like that, just the visual aspect that the desert can lend itself to beautiful shots is incredible. The sunset, the bright skies, the contrasting colors, dude, and then these oil wells in flames. I mean, some of those were just mind blowing, and it really, growing up learning about the Gulf War, I didn't know that had happened at all. Couldn't understand or comprehend like the magnitude of how much that must have sucked. But then watching this movie and seeing it, it was just like it was devastatingly beautiful. Some of those shots.
It's definitely one of those like you mentioned like learning about it like I think especially like if you ever watch like a documentary about the Gulf War or whatever, it's always like, and then Saddam lit the oil fields on fire. And it's always this super far off shot where you see just plumes of black smoke, but like you don't really appreciate it. Like, versus like this film is watching these guys walk like in the middle of it, like they're walking through black clouds and it's raining oil on them and all that. Like, the magnitude of what is actually occurring is much more understandable in this movie than any kind of documentary that was done where you just see random fires in the distance.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, that's one of the best ways that we learn is visually. I think that's true for a lot of people. And watching a well done war movie kind of brings it home for a lot of folks. I know that's what gets people interested in studying history more is, watching this film or like Band of Brothers or some other era piece that, really brings home what that conflict was like for the guys on the ground. We can put ourselves in their shoes, whether it's a civilian imagining a lot or one of us imagining a little bit. I mean, you and I could have easily been in any of these conflicts if we had been born at a slightly different time, because we've been there and done that just a generation removed or something. So thinking about what it must have been like for these guys to go through that is it's pretty heavy duty, dude. And this film does a great job of that, seeing it through the eye of the enlisted man, from the struggles of boot camp through waiting and then through actually getting up to the moment where you can do your job.
So I know we've talked about a lot of different aspects of this film. What about this film? What is your favorite part of this film? Whether it's a scene or a motif or literally anything, what would be your favorite part of this film?
I think what makes me like this film the most is the interaction between the enlisted guys and how they go back and forth and the different personalities that you see. The salty staff sergeant, the dweeby guy who likes to sing Christmas carols and light stuff on fire on accident because he's just so green and young. They captured the Marine platoon pretty well. I was an infantry guy. These guys are infantry dudes. They're snipers, so they're super cool. But, I had Marines like this with me on both of my deployments, and it made me reach out and text a few of my buddies. And I think that's something that I'll never be able to pass up talking about how good it is. Just bring up that camaraderie. And then, there's a thousand other things that we talked about: the cinematography, the introspective part, the final scene where they're going over the hill and they think it's going to be some huge bloodbath and everybody's just partying and shooting their guns off in the air. I mean, it had some great moments, but just the interaction between the enlisted guys and how genuine and well written that was made me stop and think a little bit.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, what is your least favorite aspect of this film, or what's an aspect of it that you would change?
Oh man, that's tough. I mean, this is a film based on real events, right? So it's tough for me to tell somebody to do their life story differently. But I think this film could have been more entertaining and had a bigger splash and been more of an iconic film if it had a little bit more action in it. After watching this movie, I definitely wanted to go watch Black Hawk Down. This is definitely a thinker. This is, sit down and focus, and not something you want to watch with your buddies getting all hyped up or something like that. This is kind of a solo film, or, like you said, you watched it with your wife. But the action wasn't there for a war movie, which is sometimes what I want. And in this case, it wasn't there. And this was good for this film, but I think it would have been interesting to see a little bit more of that in this movie. What about you?
I I'm not quite sure what about it would change. Actually, now that I took about 30 seconds to think about it, there was one aspect of this film that I think went a little more artsy than it needed to, or was kind of unnecessary given the grand totality of the film already, which is we get Swafford in like a dream sequence where he's just received he hasn't received like a full Dear John letter, but like it's like Christy says she has this new friend and he's a great listener and all, and like it's all the markers of like, okay, you're about to lose your girlfriend, but it hasn't fully happened yet. And he has this nightmare where he like splashes some water into his face, looks up in the mirror and he sees his girlfriend, and then he throws up into the sink, but it's actually sand. And I don't know, that particular, just like him having that dream sequence thing, I'm like, this film is already heavy enough, and like we're already like he's narrating the film, so we're already getting his internal monologue and we're seeing all of his interactions with the members of his platoon. So we already have a very good idea of what he's thinking, or what his emotions are. Like, I don't need this super kind of out there dream sequence to be a part of this film.
Yeah, I agreed. That was definitely a pretty artistic take that could be like a little bit repetitive almost. Like you said, we're getting what you're putting down, dude.
But I I do find it funny because you mentioned, this is a life story, because this is a movie that is based off a book. Swafford is a real guy who was a vet. And then they decided to, turn this movie into a movie from, they made a screenplay from his book. Uh, and in Wikipedia, there's just like a 2 sentence thing, and it says controversy. In November of 2005, David Carr noted that uh, war veteran and writer Joel Turnipseed. That doesn't sound like a real name. That sounds made up.
Sound might be. It's Wikipedia.
Anyways, there's a guy who wrote a book called Baghdad Express, claimed that the movie Jarhead was stealing scenes or moments from his book for their screenplay. And basically, their response was, it's a Gulf War movie. Like, there's 100,000 dudes who had very similar experiences. Sorry. Like, so, like, if
Yeah,
that's the big. I find it hilarious that that's the biggest controversy that this film has generated.
yeah. I mean, there's got to be. I mean, what do you have? Multiple Vietnam movies where guys stepped on a landmine and didn't want to move because they were gonna get blown off when they moved their foot. Like, I'm sure shit like that happened all the time, dude.
Yeah. But I just wanted to bring that up because I just found that one particular gripe of this film to be kind of hilarious.
That's funny. Yeah, I complained about sand in my book, and these guys are complaining about sand. It's a total ripoff, man.
Next thing
Yeah,
you
that'd
know,
be interesting to read more,
you're
see
going to
if they're
sue George
substantiated.
Lucas because in Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker bitches about sand too.
Yeah, go for it. That'll be successful.
I also find it hilarious. Like, this is a great movie, but this movie has also spawned a series of some of the worst film
Oh,
ever.
dude, the
Jarhead
follow-on
2,
films,
Jarhead 3, Jarhead Deliverant, whatever.
nothing like it. Totally different cast. Just carpetbagging on the original good film. They're not thoughtful at all. They're just bad C tier quality shit action movies with medium to low budgets, and just all Hollywood, dude. I watched one of them halfway through, gave the next one about 20 minutes of my time, and immediately wanted it back. Watch the first one, watch it a few times. Don't even touch the other ones, dude. They're nothing similar.
I wonder how much royalties Swafford gets from all the sequels. Because
Hopefully
they're
enough,
not,
man. I
because the
hope he's
sequels
doing
aren't based
well.
on his works.
I hope that I mean they're using the name. I hope he gets something. I hope he's doing well. We've all done worse for less. We all signed the dotted line.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. I mean, you got to balance the, like, you're proud because somebody's exploiting the system and getting that money, but also you're like, really?
I'm sure somebody watched him, dude. They made a second and a third one.
Yeah. There's actually a fourth one, but it wasn't called Jarhead 4. They gave it some tricky title that I can't
Uh,
remember.
Probably didn't want to pay my man the royalties. Sneaky sons of bitches.
Jarhead, Law of Return.
Whoa. Remind me to not watch those, dude.
I'm kind of surprised because in the award categories, this wasn't even. It didn't even make it into Academy Awards or anything like that.
Maybe there was some other heavy hitters that year. I mean, I'm not surprised it didn't get too many awards. I think it was really a film for people who had been in the military, and it was a well done film. I wouldn't be surprised if it got some cinematography attention, but with the kind of stuff that was getting put out, between 2004 and 2008, there was some pretty fucking good movies, dude. And I would have given this an award, but I think the Academy and I have different tastes.
I figured out why this film did not even touch the Oscars.
What was going on?
So no, I don't want 2005. I want 2006 because this came out in 05. Damn it! Damn it! Okay. Well, another Jake Gyllenhaal movie did get an Oscar
Oh,
this year. The same Oscar nomination year.
what was that?
It was Brokeback Mountain.
Oh, see, there's the Academy and I having different tastes in movies, dude.
Well, I mean,
Another great film.
to be
Another,
fair, there's a lot of homoerotic scenes in this movie, so I mean, probably led up to maybe he was just doing some research before going to Brokeback Mountain.
I think he was probably participating in the mop suit football orgy scene and thought, you know what, I probably should take another look at that gay cowboy movie.
There's also Memoirs of a Geisha that year. Won some stuff. and Crash. I don't know if I've seen that
Crash was a
movie.
good movie, dude. I did like that one.
So yeah, the year before it was Million Dollar Baby won most of the stuff, and I'm like, okay, that checks out.
That
But
checks out. Great film.
yeah, this film only was nominated for something called the Satellite Awards, and then the Washington D.C. Area Film Critics Association Awards.
I would not be surprised if we see more films like this that kind of cross the action and introspective movie, with more veterans coming out and participating in the arts. You know, I think you right after a conflict, you get a lot of solid shooters and solid action movies and very patriotic stuff. But I think going on as our generation deals with PTSD and the fallout of some of the conflicts that we've been participating in over the last 24 years of war, we're going to see more stuff like this. And obviously, it's kind of devastated a generation of warriors, but I'm interested to see how that comes out as an art.
So I guess my question for you is, this is a movie that is based on a book from a Gulf War veteran. Um, and memoirs from veterans didn't really start until kind of like the World War II generation. And even then, memoirs by World War II guys, like most of them came out this century as their population started to dwindle and as like, historians have kind of prodded them to do so. Um, but if we're to look comparatively between like the number of World War II vet memoirs or like Vietnam vet memoirs versus War on Terror uh, memoirs, like there's a vast disparity there. Like there's, you mentioned it with, the progression of PTSD and coping and going through that. Like, how do you feel about kind of the like influx of or the increase in, you know, memoirs or written media by like your generation of service members?
I think that art as a tool for therapy is probably one of the most helpful things a guy can do or a gal. Using your creative aspect, whether it's painting or writing or poetry or fucking underwater basket weaving, to kind of get through some stuff, work through some themes that you've been feeling, and kind of get through your issues, whatever you're carrying, let that baggage out, is an incredible tool. So I don't think I could ever dump on anybody for doing that. Obviously, as you know, this is a review show. We can appreciate the inherent quality that some art is appreciated more than others. And when you have a shit ton of people making a shit ton of art, whether it's therapeutic or not, kind of goes out the wayside when we're judging it. So I mean, we're going to get the good
Well,
and the bad in larger numbers here. And
well,
I
it's
don't
like
want to say
I'm
that.
sure you've probably heard the joke, but it's like, how do you know somebody's a Navy SEAL? It's because they got a book deal.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna say Navy SEALs aside, I've been really enjoying a lot of the stuff that I've been reading from like Grunt's Global War on Terror era stuff, and some of it, I'll open an audiobook or grab a book at the airport, and it's like just fucking thrasher shooter, written as well as they could. They're dealing with their demons, and then the other end of the spectrum is some really good, well written stuff that stays on theme and has good character building and good plot and good everything throughout. So I'll know, like I said, the artist in me will never rag on somebody for exercising their artistic creativity to work through their demons. But the critic in me who likes watching good movies and reading good books, so, not every manuscript that is written should be made into a film, and not every book that gets written is something that I need to listen to. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be written because it's going to help you, but whether your book gets published or not doesn't help with your PTSD. You should just get out there and start being creative and not worry about if people like it or not. That's how you start as an artist.
Right. So I think it's about time we rate this film. I don't know how many of our episodes you've caught in the past, but we don't do stars around here because we think stars are boring. Um, we usually try to choose something that stuck out to us in the film or is representative of the film. I mentioned it earlier. This is our second movie in a row that has an orgy scene. Last week when we did Conan, we did 1 to 5 snake orgies as our rating system. And I think it would only be prudent to, or be best to, do 1 to 5 mop suit orgies
I
for a
think that's
rating.
perfect, John. That makes me happy. I was trying to think of something, and I think mop suits is better than anything I could come up with. Can I go first?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think given that this film was based on a book, based on a guy's actual experiences, and you can't change that or make it more full of action or anything like that. For what this film was trying to be, I think it did a great job. So I'm going to give it 5 mop suit orgies out of 5 mop suit orgies.
That is a strong rating. I I'm inclined. I want to give it 5, but something inside me is just like edging away from it. Um,
I respect that, dude. There's edging in orgies, and that's an important part
yeah,
of it.
yeah, that was an unintentional pun.
I'll be
But
back.
you know, I like this film because it takes a very different look at war films. Like this is not a traditional war film. I think the acting is very well done. Um, some of the scenes are very well shot. I don't know though, like a film that I give like 5 out of 5. I think of like All Quiet on the Western Front or like Saving Private Ryan, like films that if you were to do like top 10 war movies of all time, like you would have no doubt in your mind like that's what this movie is. Like for me, that's what a 5 out of 5 rating would be.
You
And
have
I
to stick with your rating history, dude. You cannot be inconsistent, especially as a professional rater.
oh yeah,
Like, I got to respect that. You got to
you
keep your
know
fives for
we
strong fives.
we are only 6 months away from being eligible to be reviewers on Rotten Tomatoes. So
It's coming.
because you have to be a Rotten Tomato reviewer, you have to have 2 years of consistently rating. Um, that being said, I think it's a fantastic film. It's a great film. I don't foresee this ever making like a top 10 list though. Um, and maybe that's just because the war movie market is just so saturated. I would give this 4.75 mop suit orgies, but like one dude doesn't have his mop suit. I don't know.
Yeah, he's stripped to the waist.
Yeah.
I think that's very fair.
But speaking of Rotten Tomatoes, something else we do around here is after we've made our ratings, we see how close we came to what Rotten Tomatoes put because they're the professionals and we're not.
Well, you're about to be part of them, dude. 6 months.
Uh, the popcorn meter puts this at a 68%, and the thermometer is 60%. So, like a 3 out of 5.
They don't know what they're talking about. Bunch of hippies.
I think that's a bit harsh.
I think that's pretty harsh. The popcorn is the fans rating, and the tomato is the
The
critics, right?
critics. Yeah.
Okay. I would have guessed that the
The
critics would have
popcorn
liked
meter
this
had
less.
250,000 ratings. The thermometer only has 197.
And you're going to apply to be a thermometer?
Yes.
Outstanding, dude. We need you to bump
We're,
those numbers up.
we're going to mess up a lot of ratings. Because there's
Good.
some films that have 100% ratings that make you go, what the fuck?
Yeah. Get in there and break that, dude.
Like, something I've mentioned a lot on here is you've probably seen the film Sands of Iwo Jima with John Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
So on Rotten Tomatoes, that is a 100% film. And like, don't get me
Really?
wrong, I like John Wayne. I like John Wayne movies. I enjoy that film. That movie is not a 100% film.
No. That's 4.5 mop suits, maybe.
I can't remember what we even. Oh, we gave it like pinboard maps or something because there's a scene where like this dude is trying to hit on this chick and it's like, there I am, Tennessee, the capital of manure production. We're like, what?
Guy's full of shit.
Oh, but it has been great having you here. And it was a great movie choice on your part. If you've got any social media accounts or any projects you have coming up that you want people to know about, the floor is yours.
I appreciate that, dude. I had a blast. I appreciate you letting me pick the movie and having me on here. It's definitely something I'm looking forward to do again after you guys make it big on the Rotten Tomatoes. As far as social media stuff, I'm doing the same shit, man. I've got collaborations in the works. I'm working with Tor Knives, working with Black Rifle, just doing a bunch of fun stuff with good companies, putting my own artwork out there on my website. I have over 500 pieces of art for everything from artillery units to, pencil battalion artwork to conflict era stuff. So, I mean, if you're a vet or you have a family member who's a vet, hop on my website. A piece of art, a t-shirt or a hoodie with some unique American made artwork can be, it's a good Christmas gift, good birthday gift, man. I got it. And if I haven't made it yet, shoot me a message. We'll get it on the website.
Not
I
to
appreciate
mention,
you taking the time, dude.
you're keeping a traditional art style alive.
Yeah, I mean, I like you. I saw your tattoos. All my tattoos are Sailor Jerry, traditional American. So I really try to stay in that vein, learn from the masters. I don't do any tattoo artwork myself outside of the barracks. I hung up my I hung up my tattoo machine a while ago, but
Do you have a branding story you need to share, or
no, nothing that I can talk about in on a public forum. Just shitty leg tattoos without any antiseptic.
that'll do it? I mean, haven't we all bought a tattoo machine from Amazon?
I mean, if you were in the barracks too, it was part of the process of making friends, right?
I haven't had that level of tattoo, but I have gotten a tattoo in the back of an RV. So,
That counts.
but it was by an actual tattoo artist. So like it's like a step up.
Yeah, those cancel out a little bit. Professional, unprofessional setting. You really got to go back and do the unprofessional setting, unprofessional artist. That's where the real memories are made.
I just feel like I'm going to get AIDS if I do that, though.
Yeah, well, you definitely run the risk of that, man.
All right. Well, if you've enjoyed this episode and if you've enjoyed listening to Ben, go check him out at Ben Cantwell Art. If you want additional content from us, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, all those good places. Please leave a review. The stars do matter. Until next time, I've been John. Ben, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thanks again, John. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.
We will catch you all later.